A very pleasant good afternoon as we welcome you into another edition of the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show. It has been a long time, it feels like, since I've been in this spot. Of course,
you were on vacation. It's been over 2 weeks.
Yes, it has. Took last week off with the 4th of July week. We usually take that week as well as the week between Christmas and New Year's off. And so we did. And the previous week, I was down in North Carolina enjoying a family vacation. So the Dear Goon will be by, we think, at some point.
Yeah.
during the show.
I don't know how much I'm allowed to spill the beans here. We'll just say I think people are aware that we're coming up on the anniversary, 30 years, if you can believe it, of the 1994 Big Ten and Rose Bowl champion team. And
I can't believe that.
A lot of good stuff in the mix. So today that has delayed Goon from getting out here, so I'm just sitting in until he arrives.
The Dear Booch joining us here at Quaker Steak and Lube, where I already had a delicious lunch. The all-you-can-eat wing buffet is coming up at 4 o'clock here. That gets underway at 4 every Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
And, we're into the throes of summer here. And as always, it's obviously you have baseball. I know Wimbledon's going on this week, but it's a quieter time overall in the sports world, and it's the time of the year where you start getting into different topics or subjects, and you're kind of throwing stuff out there just to get conversations going. And I saw CBS Sports has the 2024 college football hot seat rankings.
Okay.
And they are evaluating this was just posted this afternoon, the job security of all 134 FBS coaches is evaluated. Now, the way they broke it down was they give you a rating of 0 through 5. Excuse me. 5 is you need to win now or you will be fired.
Okay.
Only one coach is in that category, and I haven't gone through the entire thing yet. It is not James Franklin, obviously. Franklin actually gets a 1 here, which is a safe and secure ranking. But 5 is win or be fired. 4 is you need to start improving now. There are 8 coaches they say fall into that category. Pressure is mounting is the number 3 rating. 19 coaches are in that ranking. The number 2 rating means you're all good for now. There are 49 coaches that fall into that category. Really, I would say every coach. I'm not sure. They have 13 that they list as untouchable, rating of 0. And then 44 coaches, including James Franklin, are on the safe and secure list.
Okay.
Going into the upcoming season. I would submit that all coaches are all good for now as their best scenario, because you name me the coach that you're telling me if they have a losing season. Now, a couple of them you'd say, well, there is no chance that they'll have a losing season. Like, we've talked about Ryan Day and the relative pressure he's under. Obviously, if they went out and had a 5-7 season with the expectations there right now, that would be cause. But again, if any coach slips dramatically in a season, then that pressure. I mean, I'm not saying there are some coaches out there that I would agree are the untouchable, because that implies. So there's a couple of things. Let me just get my thoughts together here. One, the winning component, I think, is primarily what they're talking about here. But any of these even untouchable coaches, right? If a huge scandal breaks and you find out that, my God, they've been, doing horrendous criminal things, they're obviously, now the presumption obviously is that, none of these college football coaches have been secretly mass murdering serial killers and
but hey,
look, no
that
stuff. But
Art Briles was on the hot seat based on what he was doing on the
how
field.
about it? Yeah. So I mean, again, it's all but I think this is just kind of taking the on the field context. But it's interesting just going through the list, and I was just going through briefly.
Let me tell you a crazy story that you just made me think of. Have you ever seen on social media? I think they're real popular on Twitter. I don't know about other platforms, but where you see the thing, it's like a little GIF of like rapidly spinning logos, and it's like tap the screen, and that's the team that's going to win the Super Bowl, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So in the preseason, NFL preseason of 2020, okay, already a bunch of caveats because it's the COVID year and whatnot. I saw one of those it's scrolling through like a bunch of Magic 8-Ball scenarios for tap the screen, and this is what's going to happen to your favorite team's head coach. And so I did it, and I tapped the screen, and it said fired at the end of the season. And I thought to myself, okay, well, this is proof positive that these stupid things don't work, because there is absolutely no way that less than 4 years removed from winning the first Super Bowl in franchise history, Doug Peterson's getting fired at the end of the season. And, listen, Ironhead, the Magic 8-Ball absolutely got it right. But before you get into the list, can I guess who got the number 5?
Yeah.
I am going to guess it is Billy Napier at Florida.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't even so I started looking at this just before we came on. I think I saw that he was a 4.
Okay. Man, if somebody's in worse shape than that guy,
well,
you should probably just quit right now. You
yeah,
can't fire me, I quit.
I'm actually trying to look here. Yeah, I'm not seeing something right, because they're having 24 rating, and then there are something is not right here, because they have Sam Pittman, Arkansas,
okay,
as a 5. I'm just trying to look through here because I thought I saw another one when I was going through earlier.
See, this is the problem in the SEC. Like,
well,
all due respect to Arkansas fans, I don't know what kind of expectations you have for your program, especially in the current state of the SEC, that really anybody there should be a 5 based on performance. Like, you got to basically have a broiling scandal that has not quite exploded yet, and then we could say, okay, it's a 5. But for God's sakes, if you're an Arkansas booster, like, just take a look in the mirror and get a realistic self-assessment about what you can expect out of that program. It's crazy to me. It's crazy. Do you remember it was not that long ago? Think about the way they were talking about Sam Pittman when Penn State played them in the bowl game.
Yep.
And for him to now be a 5.
Like, you have to win or you're out.
It just shows you have got to be a special kind of crazy to take a job in the bottom half of the conference, going all the way back to the conversation you and I had at the time, Ironhead, about is Joe Moorhead really making the right move going to Mississippi State? Like, it's a head coaching job. It's the SEC. But if you're trying to set yourself up for long-term success, going to the bottom of that conference where everybody, even the lowest of the low, still believes they're only 1 or 2 breaks away from the promised land. I don't. That's crazy to me. Crazy that Sam Pittman would be in that much trouble. But on the other hand, I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe it.
By the way, Joe Moorhead is listed as pressure is mounting at Akron.
Yeah, there's a lot of expectations.
By the way, yes. I mean, that is, it's just interesting.
I actually think, since you brought up Akron and expectations of coaches here, this is it's a backhanded compliment, I guess, but it's the MAC. It is what it is. I really think those schools ought to consider maybe starting to position themselves almost more like a high level junior college, not academically. I'm talking about developmentally for players.
Yeah.
At one point or another, when is a MAC coach going to start going out on the recruiting trail, talking about, look at the guys we have developed here and sent on to the Power 4 or the Power 2? Because you look at the number of players from the MAC since the transfer portal has really hit full swing, that once you become a star player there, you get your shot, right? It's in the way college football is changing. If you're a MAC coach, you are not selling guys on the glory of playing at Miami of Ohio. I think it might not be a bad idea to try to gear your program toward competing in the conference by bringing in overlooked peripheral guys who might have been power. Let's say they might have been power 2 recruits.
Yep.
And they're deciding between, do I want to go take a mid-tier Big 12 offer, or do I want to play in Ohio State's backyard and try to really come on for a year or two at Akron and then get that shot to play at Michigan or Penn State or Wisconsin or one of those schools in the Big Ten?
Which then it's just the changing world we live in, and I get it. But there is something that's wrong about that, and I'm not saying it should be prohibited,
no
right?
Yeah,
but I mean, if you're a school that's able to get some of those guys and have them be difference makers, like, you ought to have that opportunity to develop your team into being something special, again, by max standards. But that,
you heard Quinyon Mitchell and Nick Saban talked about how that guy, had he wanted to for his senior year, could have been a starting corner at Alabama. And he made the decision, no, I'm going to stick with the school that was loyal to me out of the gate. I think the number of guys who will make that move, it's got to be less than 10% of the players in that position. And you can't even blame them, really, right?
Well, no.
Think about the opportunity to be coached by that guy, to play for a national championship, probably make a lot more money than he made at Toledo. Now, it all worked out, and he's going to be a Philadelphia Eagle, so I'm all for it. But that's a rare bird. Most guys are going to make the jump when they have the chance.
Sure, and as you said, I mean, you certainly can't blame them. I mean, those are tremendous opportunities, and we see it across the board and maybe to some degree even more so in some of the non-revenue sports out there, just because, again, you have a chance to go play in the College World Series if you're a baseball player. Well, if you're at a program that doesn't give you that opportunity and you have, emerged as a guy that can contribute at that level, I get it. It just, there's something, I don't know, that just doesn't sit right. And ultimately, it doesn't matter whether it sits right or not. Again, it's just the reality of the world that we're in, the ever-changing world that we're in. And I do think, you're right. I mean, I think you're going to see, I hadn't thought about it in terms of MAC schools marketing it that way, but that's probably not a bad way to go. If you're a MAC school, it's like, hey, are you trying to get to the Big Ten? Well, look at our track record here. Come and play for a couple of years. We'll get you, in front of the right eyeballs here, and we'll develop you to the point that you can go take that next step in your athletic career.
And you can say, well, that's not dignified, but I'd give you the same lecture I just gave to the Arkansas fans. Just be honest about where you are. The MAC champion is going to struggle to qualify for the group of 5 spot in the playoffs most years.
Well, to that end, Booch, because this is something, we've kind of kicked it around a little bit here on this show, but I do think it's time maybe to have a little bit of an honest discussion with Penn State fans about what the realistic expectations are for this program.
Boy, everybody loves that conversation around here, let me tell you.
And listen, I just, on a couple of different fronts, and actually, I just, right before we went on vacation, we got together with some friends, and I think it was a pretty good cross-section of representing the different factions that are out there in Nittany Nation right now, because there was one person that just does not like James Franklin, does not believe in him, doesn't trust him, thinks, it's all football first, the whole used car salesman element. And they're like, I can't believe you guys don't see it. And then there was another one at the table that was like,
those, yes,
like all in, Franklin's the best thing going out there. Yeah. And then me and another guy are like, I'm not saying he's the best football coach of all time, but I think he's really good. And I think with what Penn State is providing him, and that launched a whole nother discussion on the investment into the stadium and the facilities across the board and all of that. And again, to me, it's one of those things you look at the big picture, and what I see out there is like Penn State, I think, would tell you right now, I think Pat Kraft would tell you that they are all in being big time in football, basketball, and across the board in athletics.
Yep.
And we're going to get into the definitions of, elite, very good, all in, and, really in. Because all in is Ohio State. All in is Georgia. All in is Alabama. In terms of, I'm talking now football. Let me be clear on that.
Yep.
I think Penn State is kind of next level. Like when we say all in, I think Penn State is doing everything that it considers reasonable. And by the way, again, count me as somebody, I'm on board with it. I don't want Penn State to go over the top and start spending money. I'm worried about Beaver Stadium. I am. They're spending money that they don't have, and I'm hopeful, but I'm not confident that is going to produce what they are saying it's going to produce on the back end.
Yeah.
So even there, but when you look at the elite programs, the Alabamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States, the revenue that those schools are producing, Texas, not Texas A&M even, the revenue that they are producing, Penn State is really good, but they're not that level.
They're
good.
A tick below. Yeah.
Right.
There's no question. Like if you look at any of those charts, there's the very tippy top, and then there's a bunch of schools, not a bunch, a handful of schools that are in such a good position that 120 FBS teams would probably commit murder in order to swap places. But they are appreciably behind the top 4 or 5 programs, and that's where Penn State's in.
Yeah. And so with that, I keep coming back to the and we got into a whole side discussion on, well, you're telling me if they paid James Franklin more. So I brought up many times that Franklin, and this is last year's data, so I should update it and look. But he was the 11th highest, or I think it was 11th highest paid head coach. He's in that neighborhood. He might even have dropped a peg or two now with some of the new deals that are out there.
It's like baseball. Every year there's a new round of contracts that every year makes the big deal from a few years ago look like more and more of a bargain. Like case in point, Bryce Harper on the Phillies. Right?
Yeah, no question. And I think so. When I think you look at Penn State again, I think James Franklin is a really good recruiter, and I think that is coaching. Not for the folks that he's a good recruiter, but he's not a good coach. I not to get too sidetracked on this discussion, but I would argue that a good 80 to 90% of what you do as a coach, your effectiveness as a coach, is what you and your staff does on the recruiting trail. When Cale Sanderson first came in, one of the first conversations I had with him on the wrestling program, because we were talking about Iowa and, how they do things at the time. And Iowa had won, 3 consecutive national titles. And we're just talking about different methods and stuff. And I'm like, they just do something out there. And Cale's like, well, yeah, what they do is they get better wrestlers than anybody else. It's like, it's recruiting. Like they're not developing them better or differently. Yeah. Now, I do think that's not to say that the development component isn't significant and, in any of these sports.
He just gets the best wrestlers, then develops them better than anybody, which is why we're on the run we're on.
Yep, and but listen, I think all of these when we talk about the top programs, so I think Penn State does a great job of developing the talent as well. I think when you look at the NFL, and even when you look at the production on the field here, again, my opinion is they are winning the game, especially if you look at the last 2 years, they are winning all of the games they are supposed to win.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout Franklin's tenure, even though they'd stub their toe here and there, they would occasionally beat somebody they weren't supposed to, and they would occasionally lose a game that you're like, what happened there?
Yeah.
So, but I don't think that's atypical. I mean, Ohio State, as great as they've been, and they have been great, they also, over the last 10 years, during Franklin's tenure, it's like, how are you losing to Purdue? Like, this is not. So, I mean,
go all the way back
Alabama
to the
has had
been Ohio State's.
Yeah, but even, I mean, even like Alabama lost to Mississippi that 1 year.
Sure.
And again,
A&M.
I'm not saying that the overall results are comparable, but I'm just saying even the most elite programs out there, the Georgias and the Alabamas right now, Ohio State, they're not winning every game they're supposed to.
Sure.
Over the last 2 years, Penn State has done that. Now, Penn State has also not won games unexpectedly either, but I do think there's something to be said for consistency and getting to a point where you are, if not always, doing what you're expected to do, pretty close to always, win or lose. And when you're Penn State, that's going to put you in good stead because you're expected to win much more often than not.
Is 2016 Ohio State the last time we won a game we really weren't expected to win?
I think that would be the last one, that you would say was a solid, convincing upset, right?
Yes,
and I don't mean that the game itself was convincing. I mean, like, clearly Penn State was not expected to win that game.
Yeah, and so my point about why your friends who are representing the portion of the fan base that's disgruntled, since that 2016 Ohio State game, I can give you 2017 Michigan State, 2018 Michigan State and Kentucky, and 2019 Minnesota. Let's just throw 2020 out because of the COVID year.
Yeah.
Although that start did not help a lot, but things get back to normal 2021, but you lose. I'm not going to say the Iowa game they were expected to win. It was 3-4, but certainly they were expected to beat Illinois that year. And, I'm not even going to count the Arkansas game as a game that they were expected to win. So being very, very generous, there have been 5 games, some of them season altering in 17, 18, and 19 that Penn State should have won and they did not. And so I think those things start to add up a little bit. On the positive side of the ledger, you brought up what a recruiter James Franklin is. It's a long way to National Signing Day, but right now, more or less, the class that he seems to have basically locked in, I don't know that this isn't his best recruiting job ever, because as NIL has gotten more and more important, and you get the sense, like comparatively speaking, he's being sent out on the trail with like a bag of Playland tokens and some Arby's 5 for $5 coupons. The fact that he is still getting commitments to put together a top 10 class, to me, is mind blowing. I don't know how this is happening, frankly. I almost I'm going to knock on the wooden table right here at Quaker Steak and Lube, because I can't believe it. I feel like I'm jinxing it, even mentioning it. I'm baffled, frankly.
Yeah, no, but Penn State is, but even as great of a recruiter as I think most concede James Franklin is, he's not bringing in top 5 classes with any consistency.
Correct.
Generally, Penn State is in that 10 to 15 range with the recruiting class. And again, when you look at the overall revenues that Penn State brings in, when you look at what they're paying the coaches, what they're paying across the board with the staff, Penn State is bringing in and paying out revenue that would be commensurate with probably 7 to 15 in terms of the overall schools. Better than most of the schools out there, for sure. But again, not what Georgia, Alabama, Texas, those schools are. Well, again, I think I don't mind the expectation that, hey, at some point over a 10-year window here, Penn State should be really contending, if not winning a national title. I don't think that's unrealistic. I do think it's unrealistic to think that Penn State is going to be what Alabama was for a while there, or Clemson. And yep, it's just going to be year in and year out. Penn State, they're in the Final Four. The question is, do they win the title or do they lose a close one in the championship game type of stuff? I just don't think that, again, my opinion, I just don't think that's realistic in this current climate of college football and college athletics in general. But I think the fact that Penn State continues at this point to graduate its football players and student athletes across the board, continues to perform very highly in the classroom, and has been very consistently very good. I think that is not a bad spot to be in. Again, doesn't mean that you shouldn't be shooting for the stars all of the time, but I think understanding that you don't have the resources. Penn State does not have the resources that Ohio State does. Oh, you're saying Penn State's poor? Nope. Penn State's in better shape than, again, 85% of the schools out there, and in as good a shape as probably 90% of the schools out there. But
who's that guy, the Microsoft guy who never sold his stock? Ballmer, is it? They were just talking about his Microsoft. Unlike Bill Gates, he never sold his Microsoft stock, and now he's richer than Bill Gates, even though Gates was the tech guy and he was the salesman. That guy, he has a ton of money. Elon Musk has a lot more money than he does, and that's where we're at right now. Like we're looking at it, and we're Steve Ballmer or whoever is that. I'm confusing my Microsoft guys. Sorry if there are any stock nerds out there, but the analogy holds. Whoever the guy is, Ballmer's got great billions in Microsoft money, and our fans are mad. Like, why don't you build a rocket ship company, you cheapskate? Like that's where we're at. Spencer, and you mentioned we're right in there with probably like Tennessee. I think now I'm blanking on a couple of Florida State. There are a number of schools. I think it's 7 to 10 who are kind of in shooting range of Penn State in revenue, and we're all Steve Ballmer looking up at Elon Musk in terms of Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and Texas.
And by the way, I'm really curious to see what happens here with Michigan. In particular, over the next 5 years.
I don't think there's going to be that big of a difference for them.
But
revenue-wise, I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, I agree.
The national championship is going to vault them up into that.
No, that's where I'm going. Is I think I don't think they're going to fall off the map or anything. I'm not predicting the end of Michigan football as we've known it, but I think that national championship will be the highlight. And again, I think it's what Penn State can reasonably aspire to. I don't think Michigan's going to be, and we'll see how it plays out. I'm not expecting Michigan, and I don't think Michigan fans should reasonably be expecting that program in the next decade will win another national title. Again, a lot of things have to come together for any school other than those maybe top 5 or so on the revenue front and the expenditure front in college football. They're going to continue to dominate in terms of winning the titles. It's Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Texas now. And, again, Clemson was there for a while. We'll see if they I just read an interesting piece that thinks Clemson may be starting to gear up for another run. I'll believe that when I see it, because I think things have changed enough here. And again, same thing. I think Clemson can make a run toward another national title. I mean, again, I'm not saying any of these. I think any of the top 20 or so programs, you can have things come together in a year. You get the right quarterback, you get a good core of juniors or seniors around them. Like, man, you could have something dynamic happen in a year. Washington, I don't think Washington, now that it's in the Big Ten especially, that's not a program that's going to be making regular appearances in the Final Four.
No.
And again, right down the line, I think outside of those maybe 4 or 5 schools, And there might be one that, rotates in and out. You get just an absolutely dynamic coach, and he gets a couple of big investors or big money boosters. And for that time, they can make some noise. But generally speaking, again, you're going to have the same 4 or 5 teams with maybe, again, a team like a Penn State sneaking in there from time to time. Now, I do think Penn State is going to be a regular playoff team, meaning that over a 10-year period, my expectation would be Penn State, as it looks right now, again, assuming James Franklin's here and everything, there's no craziness that we are not anticipating. My expectation would be over a 10-year period, Penn State would be there in the playoffs, in the 12-team playoffs. And by the way, I think that's going to expand quickly to 16.
Yeah, sure.
So that'll even make it more of a assuredness that Penn State will be in the playoff mix. But even at 12, I think over a 10-year period, my expectation would be 5 to 7 playoff appearances for Penn State. And again, if you're in the playoffs, you have a chance, one of those years, 1 or 2 of those years, to make some kind of a run and catch, magic in a bottle. So I'm not saying Penn State fans should give up on the hope of a national title. I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation. But I do thinking that should be contending or, in the Final Four more often than not,
hey, folks,
I just don't think it's realistic.
Well, look, one thing I talk about a lot is that if you are one of that small group of Division I programs that we've been talking about that is positioned to contend for the national championship, and there aren't many, maybe 15 to 20 max, 20 is probably really pushing it.
Yeah.
Your identity is something that not only can you not change, you shouldn't want to try to change it, because that's your calling card. That's who you get. If you just talk about Notre Dame, USC, Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, Georgia, Texas. When I name those schools, in your mind, you immediately know what their teams look like, right? How they even down this point. Like if I talk to you about, hey, Purdue had a really good season this year, you know how Purdue won. It's just the program's identity. And the identity of Penn State is the grand experiment. We are going to excel on and off the field, and we're going to create a balance between the two. And I think always in doing that, we maybe set ourselves at a bit of a disadvantage. So you talk about the model you're advocating for that fans adopt as the expectation. What did Joe always say his goal was through recruiting cycles?
Yeah.
We're going to build towards a contender every 4 to 5 years. So every recruiting class before they leave is going to get an opportunity to seriously compete for the national championship. And I think that is still, to this day, what the standard needs to be at Penn State. I agree with you. You and I both are on the same page that continuing to bring in good human beings who graduate and go on to do good things in life, that's important to us as fans. I think that has continued. And so you're going to continue to wrestle with that. But if you look at just the last several years of Penn State recruiting, every few years, you get a top 5 or a top 6 class. And then what you want to do is you want to backfill over the next couple of cycles with guys who are going to be good complementary pieces to the top end talent you brought in, and hope that developmentally all the tumblers are going to line up. And again, every 3 to 5 years, you're going to have not just a playoff contender, but a team that's a really serious threat to go to that Final Four and maybe play in the championship game.
Yeah, and make a real run at it at least. And, the thing is, so even in that regard, so I do think those top 4 or 5 teams, are going to be there in the playoffs just about every year, and in contention anyway for, Alabama had a down year last year. Well,
do you remember that year Tom Brady got hurt and Matt Castle had to come in and play for him?
Yeah.
I remember I was talking about a buddy of mine who's a Buffalo Bills fan, and I was like, right now, I feel like all things are possible in the NFL, because that was right during that stretch where it just felt like the Patriots and Brady were winning the Super Bowl every single year.
Yeah.
And without Brady in New England, you thought, man, there's a window of opportunity where anything could happen. Now, of course, Castle ended up still, I think they still won like 11 games and just missed winning the division. But I feel like that's the situation with Alabama right now. There are a lot of indicators to say, hey, they're just going to barely miss a beat. It's not that there won't be some drop off from Saban, but the bones are so strong, and DeBoer is a good enough coach. He's recruiting well enough that they're going to stay right there in the mix. But at least you look at it and say, that window is cracked open, that a couple of things could go wrong with the schedule they have this year. And if they lose, like, let's say 3 games, which would feel catastrophic if you're Alabama, then does that start a cascade effect where maybe the other teams that are nipping up their heels start to have better success recruiting against them? The fan base starts to get uneasy. Maybe the booster donations start to pull back a little bit. I do think this season, one of the major plot lines is how well does Kalen DeBoer succeed at not wrecking the Porsche?
Yeah.
Well, that leads ding it up a little bit. That could set off a chain reaction.
I'm going to follow that up with the storylines or the programs that you're most interested in seeing how things pan out here in 2024, because obviously with the 4 formerly Pac-12 teams moving in, I guess technically they're still Pac-12 until whatever it is, August 2nd, but with those 4 schools moving in, and obviously there's interesting storylines with each of them, but, we're talking about expectations at Penn State, and as all fan bases do, you're looking at it through your prism.
Sure.
But, think about like USC fans, Oregon fans, but then Nebraska fans and the expectations now for where they think they should be. Michigan, we touched on. Minnesota, I think, is a fascinating program right now.
They're going to be bad.
I think they are too, and I think
like 3 to 5 wins max bad.
And I mean, they were like a couple of years ago talking about they thought they could be a perennial factor in the Big Ten title race, and it's just, again, you're talking about navigating tricky landscape here when it comes to college athletics in general, but even in the Big Ten, making any kind of a move up is really, really difficult. And I think even when you talk about the coaches, and this is what I'm trying to get to with James Franklin, is I think, like, fans, and we do this across the board, is, somewhere somebody's ranking all of the coaches, and it generally falls pretty close along the lines of win-loss records, because that's what we measure by. And even like in the NFL, well, if you think coaching the Pittsburgh Steelers is the same thing as trying to be the head coach of the Cleveland Browns or the Las Vegas Raiders, I mean, one has a stable culture. You kind of know the history, know the expectations, and the other, it's like, man, can we possibly change anything, with the chaos within the organization? I mean, it's just not the same thing. So you are set up, and I think Mike Tomlin's a terrific coach, but you put Mike Tomlin, and, we talk about this all the time with quarterbacks. It's like, well, if you put Patrick Mahomes on the Chicago Bears and Justin Fields on the Chiefs, like, I don't think the Chiefs don't miss a beat, and I don't think Mahomes falls apart. But yeah, I don't think the Bears under Mahomes are going to the Super Bowl every year.
No way.
And I don't think the Chiefs are winning all these Super Bowls with Fields or whatever combination you want to put. Like, it's about getting everything to fit right. And my point with Penn State right now is, again, I think they have everybody kind of pulling in the same direction right now, and I think that's a wonderful thing. And I think they're all on the same page, at least from everything we're hearing, meaning the coaching staff, the players, the administration. I think that's a big deal. And I think it's why Penn State does have a chance to make a run here, if not this year, sometime in the very near future. And I think this year is a possibility as we look at it right now. But it's getting all of those things to line up. And I think it's sometimes hard to know a coach in and of itself. Like, I think James Franklin knows darn well what it takes to win a national title. I really do. I think he sees, and he's a perceptive guy, and he's made changes really every season here at Penn State. He's made some adjustments. He's learned things from situations or seasons, and you've seen different things get changed at different times, whether it was, first half doldrums, second half doldrums, different, like, things have been addressed. Getting a big time quarterback in here, well, they go and get Drew Aller. So I think that part has,
what you and I can probably appreciate in a way that I am guessing a lot of the audience does not, just because it's one of those issues that's huge and also sits well below the waterline, is he has gotten better and better and savvier at figuring out how to navigate the internal politics of the university to get what he wants.
Yeah.
And, I mean,
that's a great point.
That's a steep learning curve, which is made all the more difficult by the fact that he was hired by an interim president and athletic director. So the guys who brought him to Penn State were 1 foot out the door when they inked him to his first contract.
Yep.
And then, I don't want to derail the conversation going back to the Barber and Barron years, but fair to say that it was a learning process for James to figure out just how to kind of get along with that pair.
Yep.
And they did not set this football program up for success in any way, shape, or form. So this is like, while the guy is doing everything else in his career, because don't forget how young he was when he was hired as the head coach of Penn State. Nobody wants to hear this, I guess, because he's making so much money. Although, again, as you said, it's all relative. 11th highest paid head coach after being here for a decade and winning a lot. You learn stuff. Like, you don't think Joe Paterno benefited from the fact that everybody thought East Coast football was a joke through his first several years learning as a head coach? Now, I mean, the guy was a savant and he won a lot, but by the time, by virtue of what he coached Penn State up to be, we were really finally earning the national recognition that he and we deserved.
Yep.
He had like a decade of seasoning to figure out really how to do the job. And we're just hitting that point with James right now. So, yeah, I mean, I know, trust me, I know I infuriate many listeners, viewers, whatever. I feel free to keep stopping me in the grocery store, at the dentist's office, or whatever. I'm waiting to get my oil changed, and I can't believe it. How do you not understand? This guy just doesn't have it. I get it. I understand where you're coming from, but I can make some really convincing arguments that there's a lot to be gained from, again, what is the identity of the program? We are not quick to pull the trigger on a coach, just like the Steelers have not been. And I joke all the time. I think you and I have said it too. It's like mirror image conversations around Mike Tomlin and James Franklin.
Yep.
But there's a lot to be said for stability in football, man. A lot. And you talked about it, like, the Chiefs versus the Bears. Coach and organization, man, it makes so much difference. And so for every frustrating loss and for every irritating, comment he makes, deflecting responsibility in a press conference, I see those things too. They drive me nuts. I talk about them during the season. There were a lot of offsetting positives as well.
Yep. So we'll kick this around some more and again talk about maybe some of the teams in the Big Ten that we're most looking forward to seeing how their season develops, because I think there's a lot of intrigue around probably 5 or 6 programs for me, not Penn State, just to, man, how is this going to look? And much like the SEC, right? I think there's a lot of Big Ten fan bases and programs that have very high expectations. And it's like, well, that's great, but there is Ohio State there. And same thing in the SEC. It's, LSU expects you to win now. Florida expects you to win now. Tennessee, well, yeah, but you got Georgia and Alabama. They're not going anywhere right now.
Yeah, apparently even Arkansas expects you to win now.
apparently.
Sorry, Sam.
We will take a break, and we are back with more on the Lion Country Kia Goon and Ironhead show here from Quaker Steak and Lube after this.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
Get our Best Wings USA, signature sauces, mouth-watering appetizers, or any of our delicious award-winning lube favorites.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak and Lube.
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
The State College Spikes finish out the first half of the home schedule this week from Tuesday through Saturday. It's 6:35 games all week, including the first birthday party of Dugout the Baseball Dog at Bark in the Park on Tuesday and the season debut of Thirsty Thursday. Saturday is fireworks presented by Penn State Health on Star Wars Night with a Baby Yoda jersey off the back auction presented by PSECU to benefit Children's Miracle Network. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen O'Habaker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen O'Habaker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen O'Habaker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon and Ironhead.
We welcome you back in here on this Tuesday afternoon. Chris Buchanani filling in for the Dear Goon, and we are talking some Penn State football, Big Ten football, as, again, we're in the throes of summer. And I will say, Butch, like, obviously I think there's a lot of intrigue here with Penn State, and especially with Michigan being off the schedule, Ohio State with the high expectations there, but Penn State getting them at home.
Yeah.
Like, it's such a different feeling, at least to me, at this time of the year compared to a year ago, where I think the expectations within the fan base last year were sky high, and I think rightfully so. I really do. And
he wasted a generational defense last year. That was, I mean, that ranks as among my most disappointing Penn State seasons of my life.
Yeah, and but at the end of the day, you lost to the national championship team, and you lost to the standard bearer, over the last however many decades in the Big Ten. But I'm with you. I still think it ends up being a disappointing season for sure. That being said, and I think I forget if it was you and me, or it might have been Galati and I kicking her out on his show, but or it might have even been Goon and I, but we were talking about I think one of the books out there has the over/under at 9.5 for Penn State. Or maybe I think most of them do. I think there's one that has it at 10.5.
Yeah,
most of them
I've
are
seen
9.5.
10.5 picked around in a few places.
But then whatever book it was that we were looking at, it was 9.5 was the over/under. But then if you went through and they had the odds for the games, it's like, well, Penn State's favored in 11 of the 12 games. The only game it was an underdog, and it was not. I think it was like a 5-point underdog to Ohio State right now.
Good.
And not heavy favorites at Wisconsin, not heavy favorites at USC, but favorites right now. And so, looking at it just in that context, like, it is certainly not unfathomable that with Drew Aller back this year and with the schedule playing out the way it is, that Penn State could go 11-1 and get in the Big Ten championship game, win that, and even get one of the buys in the opening round of the college football playoffs. I think most people are expecting 10-2. Penn State fan base, I'm talking about, not national perception, but I think most Penn State fans are expecting 10-2, and it's almost at the point now where it's like when the Atlanta Braves were winning the National League East. It's like, okay, yep, and now are you going to go do anything with it? Well, this year you have the 12-team playoff, so you might be able to go do something with it at 10-2. You'll at least have that opportunity, presumably, if you get there this season. But so maybe we'll kick around a little bit more on the Penn State side of things. I think it's a fascinating year for the Big Ten as a whole for a bunch of different reasons.
Big time.
Number one for me, and I know at first blush, it's like, shocker. Ohio State's favored to win the conference, might have the greatest conglomeration of talent, arguably in the history of the Big Ten.
Yep.
And, right up there in all
Great
of college
team,
football.
for sure.
But also have a lot of egos, a lot of new faces, and a lot of pressure on Ryan Day to make that thing work. I think I've said repeatedly, I am not expecting Ohio State to fall flat on its face, but count me as somebody that will not be shocked if this thing does get derailed. Now, when I say derailed, like 3 losses would be derailed. I mean, this is an Ohio State team that is going in, really, it's like undefeated national championship or bust type of season. I
feel like losing to Oregon would be derailed.
And I think
by their standards.
And here's the thing: if they lose that game to Oregon, I think like it truly could be derailed.
Yes.
Because I think then if that happens, and again, I'm not making any grand predictions or anything, but if that happens, and I don't think that's, it's not going to be something that completely shocks the world, like Oregon at home looking to make a point, like that's, again, would not be something that would fall in line with the greatest shocks in the history of sports. And if that happens, it's just going to be interesting because, again, I do think there's that feeling in Columbus, in the fan base, and my guess is in the locker room, like we should be winning everything. And I mean everything along the way. Well, if you lose that game pretty early on, like, how much finger pointing does there go on?
Do you have
a quarterback?
People in the building?
Do you have a quarterback controversy because whoever's second or even third on that depth chart is going to have some folks in that locker room saying, "No, we thought this should be."
Here's
the
the
guy.
Ohio State quarterback room. It's Will Howard, the transfer from Kansas State, and 3 5-star quarterbacks.
Yeah,
and then you bring in Chip Kelly, who, again, I keep harping on this point, and as an Eagles fan, I could tell you is one of the more eccentric human beings in the sport of football. And that Oregon game goes wrong, and then all of a sudden the finger pointing starts, and inside the locker room, part of the reason why their roster is so talented is it's stocked with a bunch of guys who just got there who came to do 2 things: get paid and win a national championship. These are not guys. They didn't come there for the glory of the scarlet and gray. All right. They're mercenaries. They already got paid. And if they lose that game to Oregon, especially if their coaches are not all on the same page, their sense is going to quickly pick up that their chance to do the second thing, which is win a national championship, is slipping away. And then do they start to act like, I've heard Noble and Goon tell this story many times about the 1992 team at Penn State, as talented as any team Joe had in the 90s, but lost early to Miami and then dropped another game, and that was it. Their seniors checked out. I'm not sure the free agents at Ohio State don't do the same thing. I compared it the other day on Keystone Sports. I said Ohio State's season this year has an incredibly high ceiling, a national championship ceiling, but it is like driving a horse-drawn buggy carrying bottles of nitroglycerin down a cobblestone road. I mean, all the different ways that could blow up on them over the course of the season are myriad. I think that is one of the most fascinating Big Ten subplots for sure.
Yeah.
In a season that's full of them.
Yeah, and again, I just think in the Big Ten, there was a list out, and I should have brought that with me, but there, and I don't even remember now. Galati actually showed. I don't know if he showed you that list of they ranked the top, all of the Big Ten coaches first through 18
no, I
now,
have not seen
and I think Ryan Day was at the top of the list, and Franklin was up there. He might have, I think he was 3, maybe. But what was so, and this is going back to my earlier points. So Greg Schiano was like 10th or 11th.
Yeah,
I am telling you, Greg Schiano and what he is doing at Rutgers and has done that guy is a great, not a good. He is a great football coach. Again, if you put Nick Saban when he was at Michigan State, wasn't Nick Saban at Alabama? You need everything, even at LSU, right? You need everything coming together. And I'm not saying the coach isn't a big part of it, but I'm telling you, it is getting it all to fit. And you can take whoever you think is the greatest coach in the history of football. If you put them in bad circumstances, could they improve it? Could they change the culture? Absolutely. No question that a good coach can be a big difference maker. But the best coach in the world is not going to take the Indiana football program and make it a national championship team.
Although Kurt Signetti seems to disagree.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. And partly
him coming in at Indiana, by the way, it reminds me of like back in the day when rookies used to talk smack to Jordan because they didn't know any better. I have never seen anyone come into a program as destitute as Indiana and talk as much smack as that guy has. I'm like, dude, I don't know if you're aware that the other coaches in the conference can hear you, but you have to play them this year, and they'll have a little something for you.
And I'll tell you. So one of the fascinating. So I don't know how to me those rankings are much more about the program as a whole, and the coach again. An important component. I'm not saying arguably the most important component, but again, you can take the greatest coach in the history of sports, and if you're not giving NIL money and you're not giving the right resources around it, you don't have the facility, you're not winning, not at the highest levels in this world of college athletics. To me, and the Pac-12 schools coming in are going to be an interesting watch for sure, and all for different reasons. The other school that I am maybe just because of the local connection, but Nebraska to me is going to be an absolutely fascinating watch this year to see if Matt Rule is taking that next step. It feels like they have buttoned some things down. It feels like he's getting the kids that he wants and that gets them headed in the right direction. Now, again, what is the right direction in a conference like the Big Ten that now has Oregon and USC along with Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa, all these, I don't know. But to me, Nebraska is that one team of all of the schools. Like, I think Rutgers can move up a little bit with Shiano. I think Maryland can move up a little bit.
Have you seen
They're not
Rutgers'
going up
schedule
and
for this year?
contending. Yeah, is that the one? I think we were talking about it. Like, they play. Is Rutgers the one that plays like nobody of
Rutgers
the
misses
top
all
four?
of the
Yeah.
top four.
Yeah, which is just crazy. But even with that, like, their ceiling is still what, 8-9 wins? Like,
Probably,
I mean, you're not.
if everything goes well. So, like, there are these intriguing teams in the middle of the conference. You've got Wisconsin, Nebraska, Rutgers. They all play each other. Washington.
Yeah.
They all play each other. And so if the three non-Rutgers school of that group, if Washington, Nebraska, and Wisconsin are all down, which they could be, the ceiling and Rutgers can win at Virginia Tech, another team that is, because of their schedule, set up for maybe a nice season, top 25 type year. Rutgers could win 9 games.
Yeah.
So yeah, the absolute ceiling is 9.
Yeah. So I mean, and again, that's so, like, I think there's some schools that are in that similar kind of boat. Nebraska's a school. I'm not necessarily saying this year, but I mean, Nebraska, that is the one program in the Big Ten that I could see making like a long-term move back up into, I don't want to get into the elite thing again, but into the top tier, top 4 or 5
how about
programs.
like just not embarrassingly bad?
Well,
they would go for that in Lincoln at this point.
For sure, but I think they have a chance. I really do with Matt Rule. Again, I'm not saying this year. I think they need to see steps in that direction. But that is the one program that to me, it feels like could move in and even surpass some of the, I mean, potentially even a Penn State. I mean, I could see, just because I do think the resources are there. Obviously, the passion and the history is there. And I think now with Matt Rule there and maybe a better understanding of, okay, this is what we really need to do to take that next step. Again, I'm not saying there's any guarantees here and that Nebraska will be the second or third best program in the near future, but I do think that is a program that has a chance to be right there, with the Penn States, the Oregons, the, USCs, anybody who's not Ohio State. I think they have a chance to be right in that mix fairly soon. But I think this is a big year for them in terms of taking that next step and getting toward that end of the spectrum. But I think USC is the other team program that I'm really interested to see how things either come together or don't come together this season, because I know it's the first year in the Big Ten, and I don't think for any of these teams it's like, well, you got to win right out of the gate or forget it. But USC does, it feels like if they don't make a mark, and I would say at least 8 wins and probably at least 9 wins really this year.
I agree.
I think they're going to have a tough time, because Oregon, I guess I'm presuming Oregon is going to be one of the top 4 programs here in the conference this year.
Well, it'd be a real shock if they were.
Yeah, and if that happens and USC is clearly in that next tier, again, I'm not saying with Lincoln Riley there that they can't take that next step, but with the deficiencies that they've had on defense, and that's obviously going to be the area that you're watching most closely as they make the transition to the Big Ten, I think it's going to be really hard for them to take that next step up and get into being one of those top 4 programs in the Big Ten, just because that perception is already there that they're not what they once were. And again, if Oregon comes in and takes it by storm and USC just isn't quite up to snuff, again, because I think Nebraska's on the rise, I think Washington will be an interesting team to watch in the coming years. Oregon, Michigan, Penn State aren't going anywhere. Ohio State is Ohio State. Again, I don't think USC necessarily falls off the face of the earth, but trying to be a top 6 program, even in the Big Ten, like, that's going to be hard sledding for them.
So one of the most interesting non-conference games of the year is LSU versus USC for exactly that
No
reason.
doubt. Yeah, and Brian Kelly's listed on that list we had earlier as one of the untouchables going into this season.
I mean,
and for now,
be,
for sure. I mean,
I'd
obviously.
be surprised if he wasn't right in July. But you talk about lose that USC game, he's off that list, lickety split. I promise.
Yes, and that's the thing. I mean, if they go again, they're not going to get rid of them. I don't think after 1 year. But if they go 6-6, right?
Oh, hey, if they go 9-3, depending who the three are, there's going to be a lot of
and I'm telling you, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they have. When you look at their schedule. I mean, 4 or 5. I don't know about 6-6, but four losses is definitely a possibility as you look at it right now for that program, and that just isn't going to cut it there.
No one is expecting them to lose to USC. I
don't think USC fans, by and large, are expecting that.
The problem for USC is that they did not spend the money on Lincoln Riley that they did to go into a matchup with a team like LSU and have absolutely no one, including their own fans, giving them anything but a puncher's chance.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think
this is not a rebuilding situation. He's been there for 3 years, and he went out and brought in, quarterback Jesus supposedly and Caleb Williams, and they was 7-5 last year.
Yeah, and I think they're going to be. I do think they're going to be a fun team to watch. I mean, I think they're going to put up points, and I think it'll be a fairly entertaining football team that they'll put out there. I mean, I think that they'll be, worth the watch when they play, but I think they're going to have a hard time getting wins in the Big Ten with the defense that they play. And I know they're trying to address it. I just don't think there's any chance that they've addressed it well enough to compete in the Big Ten.
It's not like they made a wholesale overhaul via the portal. And I know Alex Grinch, their defensive coordinator, got absolutely hammered all last season because of the performance of the defense. Look, he probably bears some responsibility, but the bones of the personnel are basically the same. Now, again, they're a conference rival now. They got to play Penn State. So I'm not rooting too hard for them. But Danton Lynn was one of my all-time favorite Nittany Lions. I love that guy. Yep. I just love the way he played. And so he made a name for himself last year as UCLA's defensive coordinator. And they made the big power move to bring him across town, swipe him from their rival. I don't know that he's set up to succeed with the personnel at his disposal versus the expectations that he had. I mean, how much is it really? How much is it scheme and how much is it? You just don't have the horses. And when you watch USC last year, they didn't have they didn't have the dudes.
Yeah. And I think, but to your point, I mean,
and now they're going to get beat up worse. They are absolutely going to get beat up worse. I keep making this point. The worst half of the Big Ten is not nearly as offensively potent, but is way more physical than the bottom half of the Pac-12. So even if you're playing it, like we just talked about Minnesota, we think Minnesota's going to be bad, and I think they are. But Minnesota is still going to physically beat you up while you are kicking the crap out of them, right?
Yep.
Like the scoreboard, it might not reflect a close game, but physically, you're going to take that long flight home. I don't know if they play Minnesota. I'm just using it as an example. Yep. All the bad teams, you pick up Rutgers, Illinois, Iowa. Even though Iowa's not a bad team, their offense is still going to be bad. But they will physically beat you up. Like when you look at the Big Ten, you're like, okay, who are we afraid of? We're afraid of Ohio State. We're afraid of Oregon. Penn State, very intimidating. Michigan coming off a national champion. Michigan will beat you up. After you get out of that top 4 teams, everybody who is a legacy Big Ten member, even like the Michigan States of the world, they are going to grind you down. And I think that is going to be an adjustment for these new Pac-12 schools because they had to build their teams and their rosters to succeed in a conference, to just play the game differently.
And I think all of those teams are wanting to make a point to those
For
Pac-12
sure.
teams, say, hey, welcome
For
to the Big Ten.
sure.
And even if they're getting pounded, as you said, on the scoreboard, it's like, yeah, but you're going to remember
Absolutely.
playing
You're gonna
us.
be black and blue.
And we're going to make
Yeah.
sure of it. And yeah, I do think over the course of the season, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, because I do think for USC, if things don't go well, and I don't think they're going to go all that well this year, I just think it becomes, with each successive year, a more difficult climb for Lincoln Riley to get that program back into the mix.
You feel like if there's a few signs of cracks in the foundation this year, like for sure, like 8 or fewer wins, he takes a long, hard look at the NFL in the offseason, right?
For sure. And it'd be crazy not to, because again, even with the history and the I presume they're going to be able to hold their own on the NIL stuff. Again, once you take that step back, it's just really hard. I think even more difficult now than it's been in the past to climb back up in the college football ranks, just because of the perception of where you're at. And again, it's not like those top tier teams. I mean, Penn State, for all the complaining Penn State fans want to do, I mean, they're not going anywhere. Like, Penn State's not, they're going to be consistently a 10-win program. Oregon's not going anywhere. Michigan's not going anywhere. I don't know that they're going to be, 11, 12 wins, but I think they're going to consistently be in the 10-win range. And again, I think I think where USC needs to try to make its headwind right now, obviously they want to eventually get to those top 4, but like, they're also trying to, I think, keep pace or surpass the Iowas and the Wisconsins. I think Nebraska, again, to me, is a fascinating watch. And even Washington right now, I think Washington's in for a down year this upcoming year, but I think from a program standpoint, like, I'm not sure right now that Washington, certainly in recent years, they've been the better, more stable program.
Yeah,
I think moving forward, my expectation would be that even without DeBoer, that remains the case. That Washington is really competitive, which means, again, you're a USC program that has aspirations of winning national titles, and I don't think, at least in the next 5 years, I don't see them being one of the top 6 programs in the Big Ten Conference. I really don't. You have the 4 that I think, again, are the top 4 going into this year, and I think are going to kind of be, at least in my expectation, for the foreseeable future, the 4 to really keep your eye on, with Ohio State at the top, and then in whatever order, Michigan, Penn State, and Oregon. And then to me, it's USC and Washington. I think Nebraska, quite possibly, and Iowa and Wisconsin in that next mix. Well, that's not. That is not what the boosters or alumni at USC are expecting. We're the 7th best team in the Big Ten. Cool.
What is Goon, who's going to join in here a little bit later? What has he been saying for years? What happens when you join the Big Ten? The member schools who were there, they come in like vultures into your recruiting footprint, and all of a sudden they start picking clean some of the talent that was yours exclusively to go after. And there are 2 kids from California in Penn State's latest recruiting class.
And we really thought, I even from Penn State's perspective, when Penn State initially joined, I'm like, I think Penn State's going to win it more often than not, meaning the Big Ten Conference. And I really did. Like, I did not have an appreciation for how tough it is to consistently win.
Well, and what happened was Penn State
play.
Joining the Big Ten elevated the entire conference. And I am not, I'm not saying that.
And the recruiting footprint in Penn State's territory.
You can draw a clear parallel between Penn State joins the Big Ten and the Big Ten gets serious about being a national versus a regional conference.
No question. Yep, no question. All right, we will take a break here, and we'll be back with more of the Dear Goon will join us. Thank you, Chris Buchanani, for filling in here for the first half plus of today's show, and we're coming right back.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak Lube.
Get our Best Wings USA, signature sauces, mouth-watering appetizers, or any of our delicious award-winning lube favorites.
Great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak Lube.
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
The State College Spikes finish out the first half of the home schedule this week from Tuesday through Saturday. It's 6:35 games all week, including the first birthday party of Dugout the Baseball Dog at Bark in the Park on Tuesday and the season debut of Thirsty Thursday. Saturday is fireworks presented by Penn State Health on Star Wars Night with a Baby Yoda jersey off the back auction presented by PSECU to benefit Children's Miracle Network. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen O'Habaker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen O'Habaker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen O'Habaker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon and Ironhead.
And we are back, full house here at Quaker Steak and Lube on a very warm Tuesday afternoon in the Valley of Happiness. And the dear Goon joins us after being tied up. Ironhead, they call me. Jeff Byers haven't. We ever had the opportunity.
I like it. You didn't shave. I did shave. What the hell's going on around here?
It's a lot of stuff going on.
How was the trip, buddy?
It was fantastic, very adventurous, which we like. So,
can I just say it's nice to be in the middle chair on this show and not look like I'm 5 years old. While you were out, Ironhead, we did a show. It was a great show where Landon Tengwall joined us. So I'm sitting in between Goon and Tengwall, God. And I said it looked like a dad and an uncle took their 10-year-old to a baseball game. I'm just like I'm a normal sized human being until you put me up against a couple of Penn State offensive linemen. Then it looks like I'm 9.
Yeah, that's a lot of beef.
I saw was, remember the Make-A-Wish kid at Nebraska when he had he was like 2 foot tall.
Yes,
he was like a little 10-year-old kid.
Yeah. Our good friends at For the Bloggy tweeted out that
hilarious
clip, and they're like, "There's Bucanati in between those two guys." Which, he was right. That's exactly what it looked like.
Offensive line was walking the little kid out to the field to give him the football. It looked like Gooch. It was awesome. So I was over at the stadium today, and you'll find this hilarious. You say it was hot, so I'm doing some work. They're doing some like a Penn State network type of thing, just some downloadable content stuff. So this year being the 30-year anniversary, 30 years of the Rose Bowl.
Crazy.
That's 30. It's fine.
Yeah,
whatever.
Wasn't my senior year, so so I was just over there, and You know, I went up there for
the record clearly shows
like a 20-minute interview, and we just start talking, and then we go through one battery, a second battery, a third battery, and I was like, damn, I look at my clock at 2:40. I'm like, dude, but just a fantastic time. And they walk in here, I try to grab a quick bite to eat, and you guys are talking about the exact same thing about, like, you know, when we got welcome to the Big Ten type of thing, and what, you know, USC, Washington, Oregon, what they're going to go through. And it was just so funny, like, rehashing all of this, because the guy interviewing me today was like, you know, you guys went out to Minnesota in '94, and they were making fun of you because you guys weren't that big of an offensive line. And I was just like, oh my God, that's right. That's so funny. You know, that was the era of like the 325-pound centers and just big slobs, the big sloppy offensive linemen from the Big Ten. And I said, how much we changed the whole freaking Big Ten. And Booch, you said it. How much we did come into the Big Ten. They didn't want us. But we changed the whole dynamic of the Big Ten. And that was, I was talking today, like, I went through the whole season. They asked me questions, and I said, the Illinois game, I said, we go in there, and we had just won the Big Ten, and the Rose Bowl representatives are in there. And we're all just like looking at each other, like, who the hell are these people? Like, it doesn't really matter to us. The Rose Bowl, it wasn't a thing for us because we were national champions.
Yeah.
We had that thought process. Like, okay, it's great. We won a Big Ten title. We get a ring, but we're here to win national titles. It was just so funny how the concept of that has changed in the Big Ten since we became part of it 31 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, Goon, you and I talk all the time about how Penn State has been like the canary in the coal mine for so many things in Penn State. Yeah, very good.
I used the canary in the coal mine
look,
today.
The reason why there were so many votes against Penn State during the Big Ten was that conference realignment back then basically wasn't a thing. We more or less reinvented it. And I understand we're not the first team to change conferences, but that was like the earthquake moment.
Yeah.
You can go back in time and say that's where we are right now, where like SMU and Stanford are in the Atlantic Coast Conference and USC and UCLA are in the Big Ten. That was the moment that started it. So there was I just don't think there was business thinking in the same way there is in modern day conferences back then. So yeah. Big.
No,
big,
the canary in the
difference.
coal mine. Your theory is it's 100% true, and the other one is we changed the way bowl concepts work with the '86 Fiesta.
Yes. Yep.
I mean, there's another thing. I mean, after the '94 team, they came in with the college football playoff for the bowl coalition, whatever they called it then.
And don't forget the Fiesta. We made the Fiesta Bowl. Fiesta Bowl is a New Year's Six bowl now.
Correct.
It was part of the BCS. Only reason that happens is because of that '86 game.
Yeah, so
87,
it was
technically.
and then the other one was Joe Paterno chasing the referee down about doing the reviews.
Correct.
And that's it was changed a year later, and now it's part of it now. So a lot of it's pretty cool. But I was just laughing and just going back to the '94 stuff. And
by the way, I got to tell you something. So I've gotten to the part of the summer where when I'm doing work, I will put old Penn State games on YouTube and just have them on in the background. I don't know if you're even aware of this. I had the '94 Ohio State game on the other day. You got a tremendous shout out from Dick Vermeil in that game. Do you know that?
He's going to play a lot of Sundays.
He says he was on a touchdown run, I think. I want to say by Kajana. And he's look at Keith Conlin here. Look at the way this guy pulls as an offensive tackle, and he runs the tape back, and he's talking you up. And I'm like, oh, that's Dick Vermeil talking about Goon. Yeah, it was great.
You never heard my Dick Vermeil stories?
No.
Oh, he loved watching film with the offensive line.
Okay.
So if he came in for a game on Saturday, he'd be in our practice facility on Thursday, and he would be in our offensive line room. And I always used to purposely go down there early.
Yeah.
Because I used to go in there, and I called him Coach.
Okay.
And he freaking loved it.
Yeah.
He absolutely loved it because Mark was like, who's Dick Vermeil?
Oh, yeah. You knew.
I knew exactly who the hell Dick Vermeil was. The guy who invented burnout, pretty much. But no, Dick Vermeil was like just an unbelievable guy, just a great human being, a good person. Yeah. And like he would just be sitting there, and he picked up on stuff that no one else did. And I used to really, I could not believe this is like back in that era.
Yeah.
Because when we flip-flopped, we played, obviously, it's so funny. I'm literally talking about the same stuff, but I played next to Kyle Brady, so it could have been right tackle, left tackle.
Yeah.
And then Dick Vermeil comes to me and he goes, hey, you know, when you're on that left side, your left foot should be back. And he goes, what do you do? And I said, well, I usually just cock my left foot back and have my right hand down. He goes, well, you're already tipping away.
That's a tell.
He goes, you're tipping. And he goes, I picked it up, and I was like, oh, God, okay. I never thought about that because we went in a right-handed stance on the left tackle. It wasn't like when I played that tackle,
right.
it wasn't like I dropped down into a left-handed stance or anything like that. It was just like, looking back at this interview today, I mean, we were a vanilla offense. We weren't split the atom out there running these different. We were just running straight plays that people knew were coming at them. Like, it's coming. Here comes the power. We out of this set, we run this play 98% of the time. So guess what's coming? And they're calling it out, but it just you still had to beat one of the 10 guys like on the field.
Packers in the sweep. I know it's coming.
Yeah.
What do we care if you know it's
power
coming?
Power sweep.
Yeah.
It comes.
There it goes.
Yeah.
That's a touchdown.
So Marco was the talker of us all, but he would come up to the line of scrimmage. He'd be like, off tackle right. And he'd be like, I'm the right tackle. I'm like, yo, dude, thanks, man. Like, it's great you're pulling it and hitting the linebacker, but I got to hit this defensive lineman, man. A little something for the effort here, dude. So yeah, so it was really good. I mean, I'm telling you, I was literally talking there for 2 hours and just about everything in that 94 team, but just how everything worked into it. And we signed up in 1990, and then people there was a 4-year window. And then, 1992, we didn't have a bowl game. We weren't part of the bowl coalition. We weren't part of the Rose Bowl. We weren't part of the playoffs. We weren't part. It was craziness, man.
Yeah.
But how much has changed, and how much? And I said I do go back to this, and the whole point of me getting all fired up was, what we got when we joined the Big Ten? We got the little blue ones in the logo.
Yep.
They didn't even change the title for us. And then you have Nebraska join in. They got the red carpet rolled out to them. Then you have the West Coast teams joining up, and everybody's all giddy about that. But they didn't want us in the Big Ten. They hate us in the Big Ten. They hate us now in the Big Ten. No, yeah.
Would it not be fun to go back in a time travel machine and go to a Nebraska-Oklahoma game and let them know that, within 40 years, you're going to be in the Big Ten and you're going to be in the SEC, and just watch their reactions to, what are you talking about? We are the Big Eight. This is.
Oh, there's no such thing as Big Eight anymore. It's not anymore.
By the way, yeah.
Barry Switzer. We'll have Barry on the air. Barry, by the way, so you're going to be in the SEC.
By the way, speaking of Barry Switzer,
yeah.
So the famous abandoned college football, the Jackie Sherrills and Barry Switzers of the world comment that made Joe hate the media for the rest of his life. I was in a Twitter discussion last night about I don't know if any of you have seen this. So Zach Sako's been posting these lists where he asks AI to rank the top 10, this, that, or the other in Penn State history. And then he just posts what the robot spit back out. So he's done quarterbacks, running backs, and he did top 10 games.
What does Allen Iverson have to do with Penn State?
Oh, he's a big fan.
He's
the answer. If you got a question,
he's
you go
got
to
the answer.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So he posts the top 10 games.
Top 10 games.
Yeah.
Just games.
Get the games period.
Any games.
Yeah, it was the other lists that the AI has done have been okay. I could quibble with one or two things, but they weren't terrible. This one I thought was the most flawed of the ones that I've caught that he's posted. And so, I commented back to him, and then people are commenting to me back and forth. And Scott Paterno chimes in on it. And we're talking about okay, what would be in the 10 games? Which ones are we swapping out? And one of the ones that several people, including myself, brought up is you got to have 48-14. It's got to be 1981. Penn State beats number 1 Pitt at the end of the season. They're down 14-0, and then Penn State rattles off 48 straight points. Scott tells me, I never knew this. It's so great. That was Jackie Sherrill's birthday.
Oh.
Can you imagine? I mean, there is no bigger turn in the punch bowl on your birthday to have the number 1 team in the country be up 14-0 with Dan Marino
at home,
quarterback
at home.
You're
number 1.
Yeah, you're playing for the national title. You're playing your arch rival, and they just hang 48 on you after that. Happy birthday, Jackie.
There you go.
That was beautiful.
Yeah.
People say that Joe hated Switzer and those guys and stuff like that. I don't think because when we were at the Rose Bowl, Jimmy was still, it must have been later when Switzer and Jimmy Johnson were both on Fox Sports and Fox was out in LA.
Yeah.
they both came to Joe went and saw them. They both came to see Joe on one of the not when I was playing. I think it was like the 08 one, the 08 Rose Bowl. I think that sounds about right. But those two were there, and it was just like I thought Switzer and Paterno hated each other, and Joe's like, no.
Yeah, I think
it's
so.
Always a respect.
I think a lot of times that stuff gets it's fan and or media. I mean, I just like even in the wrestling world now. Like I keep seeing this stuff about Kale and Brent Brands. They get along fine. Like there's not like they're not
mutual respect.
Yeah, it's not.
And then Jackie Sherrill's the other one that Paterno hated them. They were actually friends on. I always thought they were friends, right?
Yeah, I think.
Well, especially after 48-14.
Yeah,
Paterno was friends with him.
All the guys in that old school fraternity, maybe even if they had a heated competition while they were going up against each other, most of them, I think, had that, like you said, mutual respect. For anybody who doesn't know, so Joe, if you know him from the last 20 years of his career, was like, notoriously prickly with the media. But back in the day, used to be way more open to the point where I know at one time, I don't know if it was still Spats or whatever was there on the corner of Pew and College at the time. He would have Friday night media only, closed door, no recorders, no notebooks. We're just hanging out, and we're going to open a bottle of bourbon and tell stories. And he would do this all throughout the 70s into the 80s, and it was a way to, give the beat a little bit more window into what is the guy that Joe liked to talk about a lot of things, not just football.
Yeah.
And so at one point or another, somebody asked him, would you ever run for governor? And he said, again, under the, hey, look, the guys, we're all just men here in the cone of silence having a glass of whiskey. He said, what, an abandoned college football to the Barry Switzers and Jackie Sherrills of the world? And they reported it.
Right.
And that was it. That was the end of the Friday night drinking sessions. And that was the end of Joe's good relationship with the media. And I think part of it was, and I think he's even said as much, if I remember correctly, he never would have said that in front of a hot mic because it would be interpreted a different way than him just BSing around with the old heads.
Well, and this is one of the world we're living in. To me, just in general, like you ought to be able to have private conversations. Like you gotta and have throwaway lines like that you don't mean, and it's like, but it's going to get a laugh, right? And it gets a laugh because it's your group of friends and you know what they're thinking. Like, yes, we
Goon and I could probably do some good stories of things Bill O'Brien said to the press that was understood to everybody that was not for public consumption.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, did you see the Utah State situation with the football coach? They released him
I
10
just only
days
know
ago.
that he got fired.
He got fired, but now there's a whole poop storm coming up and around him, and that they fired a internal athletic director, 2 other people in the athletic department. That there was, it had come up a couple of years ago, and then it got squashed and this and that. So I guess a player was recording the coach, and he made an off-color comment about somebody smacking a woman around. You know what I mean? Like something
the coach said this.
The coach said it in a meeting.
See, I missed all of this.
It just came out yesterday. And then today,
do you remember the firestorm that surrounded Paterno after at the press conference?
Where
he said, "Did you see how some of these girls dress nowadays?"
No. The one where he said he was going to go home and hit Sue.
No, that's not even the one I'm thinking of. You and I are thinking of.
No, there was he ended the one press conference. He didn't say he was going to, but he said, it was after a loss. I forget now which game. I was on the beat at the time, so it had to be at least late 80s or early 90s. But he, and you knew, I mean, he obviously didn't mean it. It's just like, I took it along the same lines, but oh my gosh, it was a firestorm at the time where,
you said you were late 80s, early 90s, right? So Joe still had those on the road. Was he doing them
on the road?
Games?
Yes.
No, he wasn't doing them home games, right?
So no, the way it was set up. So what Booch is talking about, like he would do it, and it was like hours on end. On the road, he would come in. They would set up a room in the hotel, and Paterno would come in for an hour, maybe 90 minutes, and it was. They still did it. But I think he was a lot more careful with what he said, even in those. I mean, he was more relaxed for sure, but not, but it was, and then, but he would come and go with that one, where that, in those days, 70s, and I think at least the early 80s, he was, shooting the breeze for quite a while.
Like my favorite Joe story, and I will say that is when I was coaching, we were at the Orange Bowl, and when there's no cameras on him and nothing, and he's not the coach, he was such a good human being. Like, I just sat with him and we're watching like Boston College play somebody in a bowl game, and he was just sitting there telling stories about Boston College and wherever they were playing and how he recruited the coach and he recruited that person. Oh, look at that split veer wing. Look at how that defensive end is standing. He's telling stories. I'm just like sitting there like, I can't get enough of these stories.
Yeah.
Like, why is that defensive end cocked in, and this and that? Well, his only job during the veer was to take out the fullback, so he would just go straight after that to the fullback, and just listening to him talk about, like, again, he forgot more stuff about football than we would ever even think about knowing. But that was cool when there was no cameras on him and he could sit back, have his Jack Daniels or old granddad, and just shoot the crap with you. And, hey, how's your dad doing? How, it was always very intimate.
The degree to which, it was bad even that. I mean, like I said, they made a fire. It was like national news for a couple of weeks, the turtle. And there wasn't anybody anywhere that thought he was actually condoning. And they knew darn well it was a throwaway line. And he ended up, I forget, he had to apologize basically. I didn't actually go
higher
home and
tolerance level for that sort of
yeah,
but
it's but I don't know. To me, we've got to get back to darn well when somebody means something and
I'm
when
all
they
for
don't.
giving people more latitude to have verbal miscues, right? But like my point is, if Joe would have started his career in like the 80s instead of the 60s, so been from a different generation, he would have been like, a different kind of media savvy. You never would have done that. But my God, like those guys from the 60s, like, it's like everybody's seen Mad Men, like zero F's given. So like, it was just a different time.
Guys flipping on the sidelines.
Absolutely. All those pictures of guys with the stiggies and the six packs in the locker room at halftime.
Unbelievable.
Hey, can I just like slam on the brakes? I've been trying to ask you guys this. I'm really curious if either one of you will get it. It's a trivia question about Big Ten football this season. 18 teams in the conference now. Again, hilarious. The Big Ten has 18 teams in it. How many schools in the Big Ten are returning a starting quarterback who they recruited out of high school?
Returning a starting quarterback.
Returning a starting quarterback who's a guy they recruited out of high school, who committed to them versus who that came out of the transfer portal.
I'm going to say 3.
Okay.
How many? You're asking.
I haven't really sat down and thought about it, but I know offhand. Well,
Penn State, Ohio State, or do they get
a returning starter?
So a returning starter. Who is not at no point in his career played anywhere but the school where he's starting this fall.
I know of one.
Which is?
Drew Aller.
Yes.
I'm out.
Is it just one?
Maryland, no. I don't know who the hell Rutgers even has.
None of the Pac-12 schools.
Rutgers has Ethan Kaliakmanis, who was the starter for Minnesota last year. So Rutgers is out, and by virtue of that, Minnesota's out.
Minnesota's out. Ohio State's out. Michigan's out. Indiana's out.
Yes, sir.
Illinois
Indiana's starting a transfer.
Is it just Penn State?
Penn State is the only program
out of the 18?
Big Ten. There are only 6 teams that are returning starters. Period.
Wow.
We are the only one who went out, secured a commitment from our quarterback, and that's the guy who's coming back to start for us again this year. The only school in the conference.
People give James a lot of flack and this and that about guys leaving and doing this. Our guys don't leave. We don't have really top guys leaving. If you really think about what we're losing and have lost in this transfer portal, it's not really been that much. I think that guys get here and they like the environment, they like the school, they like the program, and they stay. And they really do. I mean, there's
that's amazing,
super big players. I mean, I'm trying to think now. Well, we were laughing at the Utah quarterback still being, he's there for a 7th year now.
Yes.
I And I was laughing the other day. I had to make a phone call to my brother. So the kid AJ Uli Gandhi from
TJ
who was
Ugiangalale.
Okay, so he was Trevor Lawrence's backup.
Yes.
Trevor Lawrence was on his second contract in the NFL. And he wasn't he was a red shirt.
Yeah.
Then he backed him up.
Yeah.
Then
So
he did 2 years there. And then he did
he's on
Oregon State.
Yeah, he's
and
on his
now
third
he's at
team.
Florida State. I believe it's his 6th year. So
Yes.
it was like ho-hum. Oh, it's a COVID year. Like, okay, well, he's throwing those years away. It just drives me absolutely bonkers.
Oh, Dylan Gabriel, the starter for Oregon,
Yeah, he's
also
from
on his
Purdue.
third school.
Was it South Florida, Central Florida?
Central Florida, then Oklahoma, and now he's at Oregon. He's also in his 6th year.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah, so there are at least so I just did this show on Keystone this week. There are at least 12 of the 18 schools in the Big Ten are starting transfer quarterbacks. Now they're not all first-year guys. Like Cade McNamara at Iowa is a transfer quarterback, but he's also a returning starter.
Yeah.
But 12 transfer portal quarterbacks are set to start, and then there are 2 other schools that have quarterback competitions where a transfer portal guy might be the starter. So it could be as high as 14. I think those will probably go 50-50. I think Maryland is going to start a kid from NC State.
I don't like it.
But Northwestern actually lost their starter after the spring to Iowa. So they've got an open quarterback competition. I think they will probably start an in-house kid, but they did get a transfer for insurance.
McNamara's at Iowa, but the kid from Northwestern left to go to Iowa?
Correct. Because the thing with McNamara is he is, I think this is his last year, and he's coming
Allegedly.
off a knee. Yeah, well, right. Who knows? I do think this is it for him, and he's coming off a knee injury. So possibility that Brendan Sullivan, the Northwestern guy, could be in the mix this year. Like if McNamara is not ready to go or he gets injured again. But either way, I think the idea is that he's the presumptive starter after this season.
So when you were gone, we did have Tangwell on the show here, I was asking him a lot of the questions about like the transfer portal. How do you handle your guys leaving? And he's the one who said, we really haven't had a treasonous like departure. And I was like, that's pretty good. I know what he was saying, but it was just like, we just hear about all these guys around the country. Well, we really don't have that issue here. Hopefully ever.
No, and listen, it's why again, to me, overall, I think James Franklin, I think he is underrated by the overall Penn State fan base. I mean, I know there are some that probably overrate him and think he's the greatest thing ever. I think he's really, really good. And I think that's a big part of it is that culture component. And, just what we're talking about it. And I don't think it's just him. Again, I think it's the stability that at least at the moment it feels like is in place at Penn State within the athletic administration. It feels like, I'm not on the inside, but from the outside looking in, it feels like everybody is legitimately pulling in the same direction. Pat Kraft wants to put out championship products across the board and wants to do whatever he can to make that happen, and is open to new ideas, trying to create new opportunities for the student athletes and for the programs. And I think, across the board, Penn State has really good coaches right now within the athletic administration. Yep. But I think James Franklin, again, I get it. Everybody wants to win national titles. You're going to compare yourself to the best. And I don't think James Franklin shies away from that. I don't think Pat Kraft or Penn State shies away from that. But I also think it's fair to look at, again, who you're comparing Penn State to and what the parameters are for the given programs. And there's just different parameters here for Penn State than there are with some of those other programs. And I think Penn State has positioned itself very well. I think they are getting, probably a little more than what they're paying for in terms of football, and really overall across the board with athletics. I think, again, Penn State, we'll see here what happens over the next few years. I think some of the coaching changes are going to prove to be beneficial. And again, I'm talking now about the athletic department. I think within the football program, I think they're doing everything they can to keep up with the Joneses as best as they can. I think that's why, even though I have reservations about it, why they are doing the Beaver Stadium project. It's why they are, have added the analysts that they have and are, on board with doing everything they can within the framework laid out by the NCAA and the Big Ten to give themselves a chance. And I think outside of Ohio State, Penn State is on pretty equal footing with everybody else, at least equal footing, if not a leg up on everybody else in the conference. I think they're right there with Michigan and Oregon, and I think USC probably in terms of financial wherewithal is the other school that's in that neighborhood right now. But I think it's. I just think you need to be realistic about the long-term expectations. Now, a season here or there, you want to go gangbusters, and man, I think this is the year they're going to put it all together. Fantastic. But I think Penn State's right about where it should be, given, again, what they're spending on the program, what the resources are. I think it was a great point. I mean, one of the things that I do think is interesting, at least to me, is that recruiting footprint where, for all the years that, Paterno was here, it was Pennsylvania and the neighboring states. Like that was you'd get kids every now and then from here and there and difference makers for sure from other parts. But I mean, that was, and it wasn't just Penn State. I mean, Nebraska was getting its kids from Nebraska and the surrounding states. Oklahoma was getting across the board. And obviously, all of these programs now have opened up nationally. But for Penn State, now you have, a footprint out on the West Coast. Well, now you have a reason to go get those kids because their parents, it used to be you wanted to go see your kid. Well, now you can see your kid on TV if you have the Big Ten network, and all of those states now will
nowadays too.
Well, yeah, and now you can fly your parents here with the money you're making off of NIL. So it's like, yeah, I got you. You're back, mom and dad, if need be. So, or you can work out an agreement with an airline. So there's all kinds of. That's just not as big of a deal getting somebody, because you used to. I mean, I think part of why you concentrated that recruiting footprint was you worried about homesickness and those sorts of things creeping in. I just don't think, I'm not saying it never happens, but these kids now, again, you can get on the phone and you're FaceTiming with your parents. It's not like you're not seeing or talking to your parents. I mean, back in the 80s, it was a big deal to make if you're a poor kid, making a long distance call was a big deal. Yeah, that's right. Well, now again, you're able to stay in constant communication. And they can see you. They can see all of your games.
How was your test? How was your speech?
Yep. So I think that part of the world has just completely changed.
It's shrunk. The world has shrunk. But Bucci did an article. Did you release that, Bucci?
Which?
With the players from out of state, longer out of state.
Yes. Yeah. But look, the key punchline is that we think there's this impression out there that we're swinging and missing by going for guys way outside our recruiting footprint. And when you actually break down the numbers, especially if you look at it in terms of like who are impact guys that we lost, it's really not that bad. But the player like Florida is where I was focusing it, because we lost. Was that when King Mack left? I mean, by the way, we talk about like he is the exception to me. The one guy who was going to be an impact player who went in the transfer portal. He's at Alabama now, but he's the exception that proves the rule almost. If you look at the guys we pulled out of Florida who have stayed versus the ones who left, a lot of the guys who left were guys, who weren't going to play. You could say like that guy wasn't going to play. He got passed on the depth chart by an underclassman. So like, did he leave to get closer to home? Maybe not.
On the wall,
but there are a bunch of guys who aren't from Florida who weren't going to get playing time and left. So the sense that we're wasting our time going outside the footprint and pulling guys in, I don't think has been proven one way or another. We're going to find out over the next several years.
I'll be the old curmudgeon here and say, you know what? Because I was talking about it today. I said me, Bucky, Kyle, Kerry were the 4 Pennsylvania guys on our offense, and Witten and Milne. So, they had Archie, of the starters. I mean, there's 5 or 6 guys that are starting. But it meant a lot to us that we were playing for Penn State. It did. And I'm going to be the old curmudgeon guy. You think somebody from Florida or Texas or California that comes to Penn State, a.k.a. now, is he going to be, oh, wow, I'm playing for Penn State right now?
No, but
it just means a little something more. I'm a curmudgeon saying that.
Well, here's what I think about that.
But I'm thinking nowadays, honest to God, I mean, to make it.
Well,
I don't think it means that much to Pennsylvania kids either, though.
Well,
I think it's more of a business decision anymore than anything else now.
There's that for sure. I also think that Ironhead talked, and I talked about this in the first hour. I think Penn State's approach to recruiting needs to be very similar to what Joe's was, which is kind of blow it out once every, 4 or 5 cycles and then backfill with complementary guys. And that's where I think even if you don't have a great class in Pennsylvania in any given year, you want to bring in some of those guys who can be tone setters, who do say like, hey, man, this does mean a little bit more to me. Yeah. Like it means something to me that I'm suiting up for Penn State than that I'm playing college football. And if you get enough of those players, I think it carries the out-of-state guys along. Because, I mean, the first guy, and I know there's always great examples, the first guy I think of as a way outside the footprint guy who's an all-time great is Courtney Brown.
Bobby Ingram.
Yeah, and Bobby Ingram was going to be the next one I mentioned. And so, if you have a few of those, I think it's fine, but to your point, it's a delicate mix you don't want to throw off. And you want to make sure you're not overlooking the guys who have a couple of warts, who are Pennsylvania kids, especially if they're going to be tough and play with a chip on their shoulder. Like, sure. A lot of schools overlooked Journey Brown because he didn't have exactly the right physical profile and he played at a small school. If that guy didn't have the heart condition, he was going to be an NFL draft pick. And, you saw what he did with the platform Penn State gave him while he was still able to play. Don't overlook those kids.
I love it. And then when I say in-state kids, I'm talking about Marco from New York, New Jersey, Maryland, Ohio. I consider those Pennsylvania kids. But go back to what Ironhead said about watching television. Television's expanded so much. A person in Virginia could never get a Penn State game on back in the 70s and 80s.
Well, so that's 90s. I'm just thinking it through a little bit. And so a couple of things. I think you can still, I understand what you're saying. And part of me agrees with you, but a couple of things now, because all of these games, like there are kids who grow up in Pennsylvania who are huge Alabama fans or who are huge Texas fans now because they can watch. Yeah, but they're watching those games because they see them all of the time. But also, I mean, even I'm just thinking it through as you were talking about that. I mean, yes, there was the Penn State loyalty for sure. But it was also, I mean, it was Joe Paterno. It was, you wanted to play for Joe Paterno and be part of that culture. Certainly once he got established from the mid-'70s on. I mean, it was Penn State, yes, but it was Joe Paterno. And I do think, going back to James Franklin and the culture component, I mean, I think what is drawing the kids here is they do want to be part of the Penn State culture, Penn State program. I mean, I so even if they're from California, I understand what you're saying and I agree with it to an extent, but I also think you can grow up seeing, boy, Franklin looks like a guy I want to play for. Man, those kids all seem like they're having fun, or that that's, and then you get there and you meet the kids and, oh yeah, this is the place. So I'm not sure that you can't have that same type of loyalty no matter where you're from.
World now.
And I also think it's changed because we just had this discussion. I think Galani and I were going back and forth on it last week on his Keystone Sports show. But while I don't disagree that getting Pennsylvania kids is important and you want to get top kids from your state, I just don't think it's nearly as important as it once was. And because I follow the wrestling program, obviously I use it too often. But when Cale came in, what I heard from a lot of Penn State fans is, all right, this is going to be awesome. Cale's going to shut down the state. Penn State will get all the best kids in Pennsylvania, and we won't keep seeing these kids go to Iowa. Well, that's not what happened. Those kids are still Penn State is still getting its fair share of kids, but from Pennsylvania. But that's not what the difference maker has been. They're getting about the same percentage and the same caliber of kids that they always got, and the same number. I mean, Spencer Lee goes to Iowa. I mean, Iowa has had a number of kids, and other schools throughout the country too. But what the actual difference maker for Penn State was that Cale Sanderson, along with getting the Zane Rutherfords and the Jason Knowles from in-state, went and got David Taylor from Ohio, went and got Bo Nickel from Texas, went and got Morgan McIntosh from California, and Mark Hall from Minnesota, all of these guys from all over the country. And you want a core component of the local kids. You're the best state for high school wrestling. You don't want to ignore that. But if you miss out on a Spencer Lee, it's not the end of the world, because you have a national footprint and you can go get now a Luke Lillidahl or what have you. And so to me, it's the same thing with football. You wanted to get that top quarterback prospect in state. The fact that you lost out on him, it's like, well, okay, can you go get one of the other top 10 guys from somewhere else? Like, it's not the end of the road if you don't get that local guy now.
By the way, a little interesting subplot along these lines. I don't know if you guys have been following it, but Penn State is hot in pursuit of what to me would be the damn near seismic flip if they can get the number one recruit in Pennsylvania to decommit from Ohio State and instead pledge his allegiance to the Nittany Lions. And there is a ton of buzz about that happening.
Another one.
I mean, has that? Can you guys think about? Have we done that? Have we flipped a recruit from Ohio State?
Well, you said we flipped Micah, but it wasn't because of.
Yeah. No, I'm not counting Micah Parsons.
Real quick, but I do want to say that if you, like me and Vooch, do the radio, the TV show on Monday nights with the players now, I bet you to a man, every one of them mentions one thing about why they wanted to come to Penn State. Whiteout. I came to the Whiteout game. I watched the Whiteout game on television. I said,
well, now if you're a West Coast recruit, you can wake up early and watch it at 9 a.m.
They haven't announced it yet. Have they announced it?
No, I'm joking. Oh, I really hope they don't do that.
I hope not too, but
not all.
The old 9 a.m. whiteout. Gotta love it.
Okay, let's go back to the anti-Penn State mechanism from back in the day when they hated us and the holding calls and the bull crap calls in Michigan and stuff like that. Will they make Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA play 9 a.m. games? Because the old Big Ten would have said, well, no, you're going to play at our times and this and that. It's not fair to have Oregon play Michigan at Oregon 9 o'clock physically for them.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be really surprised.
That's what I'm saying. But I think they're going to cater to the new team.
Oh, wait, you're saying, well, no,
or is it going to be the old curmudgeon Big Ten that,
well, here's the question. I should know this off the top of my head, but I don't.
It's not fair to Oregon. They have to play Michigan
Ohio
at 9
State
a.m.
at Oregon. That's got Big Noon written all over it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's a good question.
So that's 9 o'clock.
That is a good question.
Yeah. Players. So Oregon's going to play a home game at 9 o'clock in the morning.
I don't know.
If they're playing at Michigan, they're going to play at 9 o'clock in the morning. That's okay. I get it. It's at Michigan.
Yeah,
they're going to put Ohio State out there at Oregon and put them on at noon, and it's 9 o'clock for their fans.
Wow,
that would be the ultimate. Hey, welcome to the Big Ten, guys. Because that ain't right, in my opinion. That's a slant towards.
Yeah, that is a good question.
River.
Exactly. You're telling me all I got was a number one dash from the Big Ten. That was what Penn State got for.
Okay, so
that would be tough though. Because your wake up call would be what at like 5, right?
What would they do? Because I remember playing out in the BYU. We played out at USC in my era. We went out like a Thursday morning and tried to like assimilate to the times. You know what I mean?
But I mean, even for like Michigan or like
Ohio
State,
assimilate in a day or two. There's no way.
Yeah, I mean that. Oh, I don't know. That's
right.
That's
you're going to have West Coast teams. They're going to try to play them at noon on the East Coast. That's 9 a.m. for them.
I mean,
that's
you've got. Yeah, it is brutal. That is.
And now he's talking about putting Oregon versus Ohio State.
Well, that's what I'm wondering is if.
Yeah, that is October 12th, and at the moment it is TBD.
All of them are TBD.
Yeah.
There's no way they can ask their fans to be there at 9. So, what time the game's
That's a pretty
open?
big ask.
I mean, I'd be there tailgating at midnight.
7. Yeah, you'd have to.
Yeah. I think, that is a rock and a hard place because that is one of the biggest games in college football this year.
Yeah. And you want it to be if they say they want it to be the big noon games, but look at October 12th. What other big games are there? You know what I mean? Who would possibly take the night game and then switch? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm gonna look at it.
I mean, Oregon, Ohio State's got to be a
9 a.m. That is an awfully tough ask
it's
it's
crazy.
See, now you got homework for this week, guys.
But that would be
because
right now you're asking that not just
fans,
well, fans and the support staff. Like you're talking about, I don't even know 4 a.m., 5 a.m. that a lot of those people are going to have to be.
I mean, it was weird playing at 11 o'clock in the morning in the Hangover game, which was the Hall of Fame, aka Outback Bowl. Remember that was 11 a.m. May have been 10:30.
That one was brutal. That was 11,
one, buddy.
It was 11. That was.
Were you actually inside?
Yeah.
Oh, good for you.
Yeah.
You want to watch that game on? That's a fun game to watch.
That one was
Penn State Auburn, January 1, 96.
So see here, the other big game that day is Penn State at USC.
Wow. Now you're not just talking about Penn. You're talking about Big Ten. You're talking overall.
Don't
right?
make Penn State at USC the 9 a.m. game.
I think it's kind of both. I'm looking here. I'm just looking at the Big
No
Ten.
offense. One of us is going to play at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, so I am looking at the Big Ten games that are happening that day. Purdue versus Illinois, Washington at Iowa, Minnesota at UCLA. Okay,
you could do Washington at Iowa
at Rutgers. You could.
That's not. I can't imagine they'd be real excited about it. No, at all.
I am looking here.
Not
I'm
at
not
all.
seeing
Especially
anything.
Washington's going to have a couple of losses by that point.
So Penn State,
USC, and Ohio State at Oregon both get both
big
on
games
the West Coast.
They're not going to put them both at night.
Nothing.
They're not doing a night game.
Yeah, there is nothing else. There's slop. Washington at Iowa is like the best you can get.
Nationwide games are there for ESPN because we're not on ESPN or ABC, right?
We have no ESPN or ABC. So forget about it.
CBS might pick us up as a 4 o'clock game, 5 o'clock game, maybe.
Yeah.
That
could be a mid-afternoon game.
And then UCLA.
And listen, there's nothing that prevents Fox or FS1, but Fox. I mean, Fox is doing primetime games, right? Like they're gonna have
one of us is gonna be a primetime game, but they're not gonna. They're not.
But,
I mean, would we?
But they've been putting their big. I mean, you would think Oregon. That's going to be interesting. All right. Well, we'll sit and ponder that. We're going to wrap up shop for today. We will be back Thursday in some version. Hopefully, we'll be on the air here locally as well. And folks, until then, be good and be safe.
Coast into fall with a new Kia from Lion Country Kia. Right now, get a 24 Kia Seltos for 5.25% APR for up to 48 months. A new Sportage plug-in hybrid at 0.9% APR. Check out our 23 Sorrento hybrid for as low as 4.5% APR. And don't forget, all 2023 and 2024 Kias come with a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty. Stop in and meet with one of our sales experts today and coast into fall at Lion Country Kia. We want to see you in a Kia.
If you love wings, if you love rings, and all kinds of other tempting things, great times, great food, get to Quaker Steak Lube.
Get our Best Wings USA signature sauces, mouth-watering appetizers, or any of our delicious award-winning lube favorites.
Great times, great food. Get to Quaker Steak Lube.
The Center Hall Farm Store has been serving Center County and beyond for well over a half century. A small family business, the Center Hall Farm Store specializes in animal nutrition and manufactures its feed fresh using local ingredients. Get the best in horse, cow, pig, chicken, and bird feeds. If you're not already a customer, stop in and see why so many of your neighbors are. The Center Hall Farm Store at 110 West Allison Street in Center Hall, or call us at 814-364-1393.
The State College Spikes finish out the first half of the home schedule this week from Tuesday through Saturday. It's 6:35 games all week, including the first birthday party of Dugout the Baseball Dog at Bark in the Park on Tuesday and the season debut of Thirsty Thursday. Saturday is fireworks presented by Penn State Health on Star Wars Night with a Baby Yoda jersey off the back auction presented by PSECU to benefit Children's Miracle Network. For tickets, call 814-272-1711 or buy and download at statecollegespikes.com.
Ready to be part of something bigger? Come pave the road to success at Glen O'Haw-Baker and discover a career where your hard work and determination can build a bigger, better future. Our team believes we can build a stronger future together. Join us at Glen O'Haw-Baker, where we value teamwork on the field and on the job. Go to GOHcareers.com to apply. GOHcareers.com. And best of luck to all the Center County sports teams all season long from everyone at Glen O'Haw-Baker.
With a Timber Kids savings account, you can start to save money, earn prizes, and teach your kids the value of savings. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Building futures is what we do at TFCU.
You really need to belong to a credit union. You belong at TFCU, Timberland Federal Credit Union, a credit union you can grow with.
The Goon